Welcome back. Now it's time to get our hands dirty with code, okay? And I want to use this simple example on the Flask website to explain to you all that you need to know about how to receive web request or HTTP request and then respond back to the client with some response, okay? Now, for every Flask application, you need to import Flask from the Flask module. So this Flask here is a class, and this Flask is the module that we will be installing. So you create a file and then you say from Flask import Flask, and you need an instance of the Flask class. Conventionally, we call it app, but it's not compulsory for you to call it app. I said conventionally. Convention, like I told you earlier, is just a set of standards that have been agreed upon in the community. So we tend to call it app all the time, and it's only right for you to also call it app. But if you have any reason why you cannot call it app, for instance, you've already used app as a variable name in your file, then you are free to choose any other name at all. But that is the convention. So you say app is equal to Flask, and then you pass underscore underscore name underscore underscore. I will do a video to explain why we need this underscore underscore name underscore underscore. But basically, if you have a Python file and you print underscore underscore name underscore underscore, it is going to give you the name of the module. And the Flask class uses the module name to determine the root of your project directory, or the folder, the root folder of your project. And it uses that to resolve path to your HTML template and static files and other sorts of information that you need to build your web application. We will understand that later, but for now, this is what you need to do. And once you have an instance of Flask, which in this case we call app, all you have to do is to use a decorator called route. So you say at app.route and then you pass a URL there. What we are doing here is called route registration. We are registering that when the user visits slash on our web application, we want Flask to call this function. The function is called hello world. And in Flask, whatever you return at the end of a function is what will be sent back to the client as a response. So let's go to our project folder, and I'm still in the folder we created earlier on. I'm going to delete my virtual env so we can start from scratch, and I'm also going to delete the app.py file we originally had. So now the folder is empty, and I'm going to do python 3 minus env env to create a new virtual environment. I didn't deactivate the first one, sorry. So let me see. Yeah, I have a new one created, and I'm going to say source env bin activate. So now it is activated, and I'm going to create a file called app.py, and I'm opening that in Visual Studio. And excuse me, I have had this feedback that my terminal's font is too small, so I'll try and increase it here. I hope this is okay for everybody to see. Now if I did ls, you see the virtual env folder and the app.py file I have created, and then I have opened it in Visual Studio. So in app.py, all we need to do, like I explained earlier, forget about this linting tool. We would have a video about that. So I'll say from Flask import Flask. So mind you, you are importing Flask, the Flask class with a capital F, from the Flask module. And I will say app is equal to Flask underscore underscore name underscore underscore. And then I will use the app decorator called route to register a route. And then I'll say def index. I'll say return hello Flask. Okay, now I will come in here and place a function there which I will explain in the next video. I don't need this function. I can put it away. Okay, so over here I will say app.run, and this is all we need to build a Flask application. So with our virtual env activated, we can go and execute this app.py file, and we will visit the browser to see our output in the browser. So I come in here and then I will do python app.py. What? No module named Flask. Oh, sorry. I didn't install the Flask module when I created the virtual environment. So what we can do now is to say pip install Flask. And pip is going to download Flask and put it in our virtual environment. Now that is done, I can go back to execute my file. And if everything is successful, you can see that it's saying 7 Flask app environment production warning, do not use development server in production. I'm going to explain all these, but then by default Flask runs on port 5000. So if I go to my computer, I open my browser and I do http://localhost 5000. There you have it. You have hello Flask. And this is basically all we need to be able to build a Flask application. I know that line 10 and 11 might be difficult for some people to understand, and so in the next video I'm going to explain to you exactly why we have these two lines here, and we will continue our lessons on Flask. So thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.